Dr. Shabir, welcome to Let the Quran Speak.
My pleasure to be on.
Now, we're continuing our series, Questions on the Quran. Dr. Shabir, when we open the Quran, we notice it's all in Arabic. We live in an English-dominant world, right? So it comes as quite a shock to people who are opening it for the first time. So why is the Quran in Arabic, Dr. Shabir?
Yeah, so to give some perspective on this, we should reflect that on the fact that many of the ancient scriptures are in various other languages.
Mm-hmm.
For example, we have the scriptures of the Indian religions in perhaps Sanskrit. We have the Hebrew scriptures, obviously in Hebrew, that forms the Old Testament of the Christian Bible, and which is obviously the Tanakh, the scriptures of the our Jewish friends. And then we have the New Testament is read by Christians in English today, and many would only be familiar with the fact that their Bibles are in English. Mm-hmm. But the New Testament is actually written in Greek, and when you're reading English, you're reading an English translation. Mm-hmm. So the entire Bible is really, if you're reading it in English, is a translation either from Hebrew or from Aramaic or Chaldean or from Greek in the case of the New Testament. So then, with that in mind, it's not very strange that the Quran is also in a foreign language, foreign from our perspective. Mm-hmm. But why did God choose to make it in Arabic in the first place? That may have a lot to do with the time and place and circumstance in which the Quran was revealed. It may also have something to do with the development of the Arabic language at the time, and God knows best. But it's probably mostly due to the time and place and circumstance.
I guess because it was being revealed to Arab people? Could that be the reason?
Well, initially, yes. And naturally, the message had to have a foothold in the land in which it was first revealed. The Quran informs us that God has sent prophets and messengers to all people throughout time. So that nobody was, I don't mean nobody in the sense of one single individual, but no people was left without a warner or somebody to give them that message from God. Moreover, the Quran says that when God sends a messenger, he sends the messenger to speak in the language of the people, so that naturally they could understand what God is communicating to them. In the case of the Prophet Muhammad, on whom be peace, who lived some 1400 years ago, was born in the year 570 of our common era, he lived in Arabia, and the people around him spoke Arabic. So naturally, he had to convey the message of God to them in their mother tongue, in the Arabic language. And the Quran itself draws attention to that fact by stating so in the beginning of the 12th chapter of the Quran, Inna anzalnahu Qur'anan Arabiyyan la'allakum taqilun. We have revealed it as an Arabic reading so that you may become wise, you can intellectualize. And so too in the 41st chapter of the Quran called Fussilat, that's the name of the chapter. It says basically that when the Quran is being recited to them, the people are puzzled about this Quran, this message, and the Quran's explanation for its very being and the fact that it's being revealed to them in the Arabic language is that had it been in some other language, they would have complained, what are we to make of this book? So naturally, the message had to take a foothold in that environment to begin with. And as of necessity, it had to speak in the language of the people so that they could understand the message, they could rally to its call, and then they could be enthused to take this message to other people in other lands.
Mm-hmm. Now, Dr. Shabir, when you talked about the Bible, that kind of piqued my interest because I thought, the Bible, everybody reads it in English, right? And they don't even think about the fact that it was Hebrew before. But with the Quran, we've still retained that Arabic as a primary language. And the English is often, whereas in the Bible, the English flows very nicely, in the Quran, in English doesn't flow that well. And there's a feeling as if you're getting an inferior interpretation of the Quran when you're reading the English, right?
Yes. And this is a problem for translators. Do you translate exactly the way it flows in the Arabic? Or do you translate in the way it should flow in English? You see, there's a way in which a thought flows in English. And what the translators tend to do, which is a good thing in its own way, is that they try to stay literally with the Arabic so that if the Arabic is put in a double negative, which is very common in Arabic, then they do the same thing in English, which seems odd to an English listener or reader. I mean, we do say things sometimes in a double negative in English, especially academics do this because they want to be very precise in what they're saying. But usually in newspaper articles and so on, you don't have this kind of double negative. But in Arabic, it is very common. I mean, it's there in our declaration of faith. There is no God but God. So there's a double negative there. But it starts by negating and then it's not. That's not an example of a double negative, is there? No. A double negative would be something like I'm not telling you not to do this. So it's this is very common in Arabic and very common in the Quran. But to translate that now, we should have a certain freedom to translate, because our purpose is to convey the message in a meaningful way to the listener or reader in the new language, in the target language. And so we should translate it in a way that makes sense that way. And the translators, by trying to stay literally with the Arabic text, sometimes they produce an English reading which is difficult and grating on the ear of the listener.
Like, Shabir, is the message more important than the text, in the sense that, like, let's say somebody just wants to read the English translation of the Quran. Is that enough? Like, would you say that this person is being faithful to what God wanted us to do with the Quran?
Yes, and also no. Let me explain the two. So the yes part is that the Quran has been revealed as a simple book to give a simple message to all and sundry. So that everybody can understand its basic thrusts, that you should only believe in one God, shun all worship of any other God, you are to be a good person, and so on. All of these are the basic content of the Quran, and anybody can understand that and should understand that. And to a certain extent, people already understand that even without reading the Quran. But the Quran is going to give more specifics and some rules about daily living and so on. So all of this could be understood by the average person in simple English language. It doesn't have to be complicated. You don't need to go to the original language for that. But like with the study of all scriptures, there are people who specialize in studies, people who specialize in the Bible. And in the Bible, there are people who specialize in particular books. Some people specialize in the Gospel according to Mark. Some people specialize in the book of Genesis, and so on. So specialists have to approach the book in its original language. They will even have discussions with each other in the original language, like academics will speak to each other using the original languages, not so much perhaps in Greek, but perhaps in Hebrew. And with the Arabic Quran, there are people who know the Arabic language, and they're discussing the finer points of the Quranic teaching with reference to the exact Arabic term that is used. So here we have the yes and the no. Yes, the average person can read in any language and grasp the message. No, that is not enough, because for academics at least, we need to approach the original text in its original language, and then based on what we understand from the original, we try to put that in translation and in further explanations for the common folks, for the masses. In between, what is very interesting in the case of the Quran is that the language of the Quran, the Arabic language, has remained quite uniform, at least in the literary expression, throughout the Arabic world. And so this is the language of newspaper articles, of news broadcasts, of textbooks, and so on. So that even though people may speak a wide variety of colloquial Arabics, to the extent even that sometimes they cannot understand each other from two parts of the Arabic world, yet they use the same literary Arabic. And that means that the language of the Quran has remained alive among the populace of Muslims today. And of course, there are many who, like myself, didn't grow up in an Arabic part of the world, but we've tried to learn as much of the language as we can so as to appreciate the beauty and the wisdom of the teachings of the Quran directly from its source, through its original language. So Arabic has remained alive among Muslims, so that a large number of Muslims hearing the Quran, reading it, are able to grasp its message right from the original source. And there's a beauty in that we have the sense that we're not depending on somebody who has told us what the Quran means. We can hear it, and we know what it means because we know the language.
Thank you
Praise
for
and
sharing.
thanks be to God.
Thank you, Dr. Shabir. Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
If you enjoyed this video, click like and subscribe. And please donate to support our work at QuranSpeaks.com.